We are so excited to have Nakiea Wilkinson with us of NICU Stories. From Nakiea, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, who is Nakiea?
I'm Nakiea Wilkinson. I'm a wife of 11 years. We just recently celebrated our 11-year anniversary.
Woo!
Um, Girl, double digits. We made
You made it.
it. I'm a mom of three. Two of them I birthed. My third, my oldest, she lives with her mother in Massachusetts. Both of my children were in the NICU, and that's what inspired NICU Stories. We wanted to kind of raise awareness and share that not every NICU experience is a preemie adventure. It's, sometimes you have full-term babies that are in the NICU. My daughter was born 1 pound, 6 ounces, and she was born at 23 weeks gestation. She spent 4 months in the NICU. My son was full term, planned C section, healthy baby, but was born with Hirschsprung's disease. He had to have a pull through surgery at I think it was like 5 days old, 10 days old. And that landed him in a NICU for 10 days. So
Wow.
even though I was in a NICU for 4 months with my daughter, I got through it. But the hardest part was the 10 days, because you figure your second pregnancy, it's going to be a breeze. You'll never end up in a NICU again. But I ended up in a NICU, and it was the most traumatic experience for me, because I just didn't think I'll be there again. And that's when I realized NICU PTSD was very real. So we
Wow.
try to raise awareness and be that voice and be a platform for parents to share their stories, because sharing your story is part of that healing process, especially the trauma of the NICU.
Right.
Not bringing your baby home with you is the most traumatic blow to any parent, to have to leave your tiny little baby in the hospital and to have to do that twice. It takes a toll on
Wow.
you. So that's why we birthed NICU Stories. It's a podcast, and we're working on getting into some of the hospitals locally, to support some of the NICU families here in North Carolina. Used to live in Connecticut and relocated to North Carolina, so we're getting acclimated with the hospital system out here.
Wow. Tell us, what does NICU stand for?
Neonatal intensive care unit. Typically, a lot of people think, oh, it's only preemies, but it's any type of newborn illness, newborn
Mm.
diseases. A lot of children have a lot of medical issues at birth. So it isn't always about prematurity. A lot of children are born with tons of different ailments that land them in a NICU and have a long post NICU life, where they're in children's hospitals, multiple children's hospitals.
Mm.
My daughter was in two different NICUs. I know some
Wow.
of the families that we work with, their children are in and out the hospital. Like my son, you would think, because he was a full term baby, his first year of life, I want to say we had 5 or 6 hospital stays after being in the NICU. So it's rough. NICU parents, people think like, oh, you didn't have to have them full term. You don't have to have the stretch marks. That's the crazy thing you can say to a NICU parent. Oh, you don't have to worry about the waking up in the middle of the night and yada yada yada, because the nurses are doing it for you. That's the most
Oh,
absolute
wow.
thing you can say to a NICU parent. That's part of being a mom. That's part of being a parent. You want to experience those things. You don't want your child being in somebody else's
Taken
arms.
away from you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want that. So
Wow.
late at night, you're sitting here thinking like, I want to see my baby. I want my baby home. And your baby's sitting in a hospital bed away from you. And in the middle of the night, you can't sleep. In the middle of the night, you're thinking, I'm supposed to be waking up to feed my child. But instead, I'm wondering whether or not they're desatting, whether or not their oxygen level is okay, whether or not they're making it through the night because they're so tiny. I wonder if their surgery is going okay. For my son, like, is he going to have any type of digress? Is he going to digress? Is he going to pass his stool? The thing with Hirschsprung's disease, what I didn't explain, Hirschsprung's disease is a portion of the colon that's completely dead. My son didn't pass the meconium at birth. Children pass the
Mhm.
meconium, which is black stool, from birth. He didn't pass it, and thank God a nurse caught that. She said, he hasn't passed his meconium yet. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And she said, let me get him checked out. And the hospital that we were at, they don't have, what is it, neonatal surgeons. So I had to go back to the hospital that my daughter was at, which is 45 minutes away from our home. And they transported him there. The day we were supposed to go home, he ended up being transported to Yale. They tested his neurons. They tested to make sure he had any positive or negative neurons in his colon, and they were all negative. So the portion that was cut off, they cut it off and then did what was called like a pull through surgery. If it didn't work, he would have had to have like a colonoscopy bag, et cetera, et cetera. But
Wow.
thank God it did work. But it was, and it still is an ongoing journey with him stooling. His first year, I had to learn the hard way he couldn't eat bananas. I not thinking bananas kind of back you up. That was our first
Mm.
episode with enterocolitis, with him being constipated and not being able to pass stool. So his stomach gets very distended, very bloated. We had to do what's called like irrigation. So we would have to stick like a syringe during up his rectum and spray saline solution through it to try to get the stool to come out, to soften it to come out. And when you have a little infant, a little tiny baby who's going through that, it's traumatic. They're screaming, we're screaming, me and my husband. And as he gets older, we still have to do this. And he's stronger. So I used to could do it by myself,
Yeah.
but I would have to wait for my husband to get home because he used to work like the second shift. So I would have to wait for him to come home from work. He'd be tired, but we would have to do it and at night. And then my daughter, she's 2, 3 years old, experiencing this too. So it's traumatic for her. And it was just a long, hard process.
Wow.
With the stooling and the enterocolitis and having to do enemas and suppositories, it's just a lot. So to this day, my son is, I have to say he's in a better place now where he goes and stools on his own, but he was afraid to go have regular bowel movements where, we do this regularly and you know how it feels when you have to go to the bathroom. Somehow in his little mind, he was able to suppress that and override that. He ended up having to have an injection in his sphincter muscle because he would hold his stool so tight that he ended up tightening the muscles in his sphincter muscle, which is a muscle that helps, push stool out. And we had to get a Botox injection for that. Once that, he was actually doing pretty well after that procedure, but he just
Wow.
went back to holding his stool. So now he doesn't do it on his own. We have to always remind him to go and tell him to go. He's 6, he's going to be 7 next month. And, there's days where he'll just get up and go on his own. Sometimes I forget, but now, lately I'm like, Justin, you got to go. You got to go. We give him
Right.
laxatives regularly. But my prayer is, God, like, I just don't want him to be dependent on laxatives. I don't want him to be constipated. I don't want him to have this anymore over his head.
Mm.
So my constant prayer is that he be delivered from this, and that whatever the case is, whether it's fear, whether it's um, whatever the case is, I just trust God that we're going to get past this, and He's going to stool regularly, and it's not going to be an issue. Now my preemie baby, my micro preemie, she has no health issues. She's like completely fine. She's
Wow.
never had any health issues. Just with her, when she was 1 years old, she had pneumonia. But for the most part, my daughter is just a
Wow.
miracle baby. They said she would have learning disabilities. They said she would be asthmatic, and she has none of those things.
Every mother has had a different journey in birthing their children, and honestly, I would say I wasn't even educated on this, like, you're educating even myself on, what NICU really is. It's not just premature babies, because that's what you think, this is for preemies and, women who went into labor early, but then there's so many other aspects to it, and I encourage you and I applaud your strength to take all of that pain you've gone through and then channel it into a foundation called NICU Stories, where
Hmm.
you're now, empowering other parents. I saw that it's not just for, moms, it's also for dads. I wanna flip this a little and just ask you, like, how do you live out purpose through pain?
So initially, I thought I would, take pictures and photos because, when your children are NICU, when you have newborns, the photographer comes around and takes those newborn photos. And NICU parents don't have that luxury. No one comes to take pictures of your baby. Maybe because it's a sensitive, situation, and it just seems like NICU parents get lost in that. So initially, I wanted to uh, be like a NICU photographer, and because I also have a
Mm.
photography business, and I second guessed myself and didn't go through that process. But then God had placed in my spirit to do the lives. And I started
Mhm.
NICU Stories as a platform for parents to just share their stories and to raise awareness. So we started out on Facebook. And my very first guest was Amanda Campbell, who is also an amazing NICU mom. And
Yay!
we started out on Facebook, and it was Facebook Lives. And then God just said, transition it to the podcast.
Mhm.
And taking that experience and bringing it to the podcast world, it became international,
Wow.
where I'm meeting other families in different countries where their experience in the NICU is totally different from ours. And some of the luxuries that we have, they don't often have. Um, there's some parents who go through such a traumatic experience in the NICU that they can't even tell their story. I had a woman that I spoke to, and so she was telling me her story through the pre-show, and I'm bawling because her daughter has so many different. She has 13 different diagnoses, and they're all a
Mm.
result from being in the NICU. Nothing about her birth, nothing about genetics, nothing naturally that had happened to her. It was all traumatic experiences from being in the NICU, that her daughter now has 13 different diagnoses. And I was just in complete tears. And
Wow.
I think because I wasn't able to hide my emotions from it, it might have brought on a lot of stress and depression and stuff like that, and anxiety, because she did suffer from that. She did mention, and she just disappeared when it came time to record her show. And I felt horrible because I was like, I really wish I could have hid my emotions, but her story had impacted. And I don't record my pre-show. So I was like, oh, I should have recorded it because I would have had something. But it
Yeah.
really like impacted me. So having this platform, and a lot of the parents I speak to, they say, thank you so much for having this, because they're not able to tell this story any other time. And God has just anointed me to, allow for people to just feel comfortable sharing with me. And they find healing, they find their voice, they find their ability to be able to tell their story more often. And one of the therapists that I had on the show, who actually went through her own NICU experience, one of the things she said was, as you share your story, it helps with the healing. And as I'm hearing other people's story, I was like, man, I have so much suppressed stuff in me as well, that,
Mhm.
talking about it more, and hearing some people's stories, it helped with my own healing process, because
Right.
NICU was very traumatic, and NICU PTSD and depression, anxiety really does come forth as a result of being in a NICU. In that experience, it's a roller coaster, like they say. And then
Wow.
having to experience it more than once, it's traumatic on any person. And just talking to a lot of the dads, like you had mentioned, a lot of dads had to suppress their feelings and their emotions because they wanted to be strong for the moms. And I wanted to have that time to let them know, like, you matter, dad. Like, your story matters. What you experienced through that, process matters, and give them a voice as well. So I have to say, this taking that this pain and making it into purpose is part of a healing journey, not just for myself, but also the parents that we speak to.
Sometimes some people get stuck in their pain, or they can move beyond their pain and it
Parents,
moves them. For
it's
you,
gonna
it helped
moved
them
you.
Mhm.
the
Overcome
work you're
some of those
doing
limitations.
as
Talk to
you
us a little bit
interview
about
how
how
pain sometimes hinders us.
So I have to say, it hindered me sometimes even doing this podcast, because a lot of stuff I suppressed, from not talking
Mm.
about it. Because when you're in a NICU, you legit have tunnel vision. You're just so focused on your child being healthy and whole and getting out the NICU. So a lot of stuff you don't actually sit in it, and experience the feelings, experience the emotions, and process them healthy and in a healthy manner, or even talk about them and journal them. So a lot of times you're just going through the motions, and then it hits you like later. And I felt like, for me, it hit me a couple months after my daughter was born, that I realized I think I'm going through post-traumatic, depression. And I
Yeah.
wasn't responding to things well, wasn't handling life well, and I just felt like a decline in my spirit. But I just managed to just get myself together, never thought to get therapy or anything of that nature. It wasn't until I started doing the NICU stories and hearing a lot of these stories, and then going back and replaying some of the stuff that I went through, that I literally shut down. Like, I like to meet with a lot of parents and batch record like a month in advance, and have my episodes a month in advance. I had so many episodes just sitting because I just couldn't go back and like listen to those stories again. I couldn't go back and edit those episodes because it took
Wow.
a toll on me emotionally, and I had to get myself together, and I had to take the time to process what I was feeling. I had to take the time to analyze what I was feeling and really just give it all back to God, and get back in the game. You know what I mean? So
Yes, yes.
I literally stopped. Like, and I was like, I have tons of episodes. It's not like I don't have anything to put out, but I just couldn't go back and listen to them and edit them because, being an intercessor, you kind of take on other people's feelings and emotions.
Mm,
And then also when you can identify with it as well, it really took a toll on me. And I was like, I gotta
wow.
be able to process this thing and not take it on personally,
Right.
and keep going. So I totally understand how it can stunt like your vision, it can stunt your growth, it can stunt your process, if you allow it to.
If
But when you
wow.
take control and press forward.
Motto at Meant for Her is to inspire, equip, empower, and connect women to become all they've dreamt to be. I mean, there's no dream that's too big. Go for it. And as we're interviewing the different women, our theme for this fall issue is Her Dreams Take Flight, but also Her Dreams Take Flight is actually our incubator flagship program at Meant for Her, where we help women realize their dreams. They come with an idea and they leave the program with a blueprint on how to actually execute it. And then we're there with them until it's finished. So when you think of the word Her Dreams Take Flight, what comes to mind?
So the funny thing is, it actually is in regards to real estate, and not even the NICU
Okay.
story. I started out on this journey, the real estate, back in 2002, 2003. And I took the class and I finished the class, but I kept hearing all the older people, the senior people saying, "Oh, I failed this class. I failed the test so many different times, whatever." And I allowed fear to, now I'm never a fearful person. Whatever I set my
Wow.
mind to do, I just do it. But I
Right.
listened to them and I took that in and I said, oh my God, they're smarter than me. They're older than me. I was only in my 20s. I said, if they're failing so many times, then I know I'm going to fail. Because, real estate is a lot of information. I
Right.
never even tried. Fast
Wow.
forward to last year, I worked for an infertility practice for many years, and the company folded during the pandemic, and I was unemployed. So the Lord brought back to me through two prophets to um, get into real estate. And I said, okay. And I was already thinking about it. So they kind of confirmed it. So I was like, I should, try to get back into it or whatever. And they confirmed it. So I took the class, passed the class exam, but I never went and took the state exam because I was just so afraid. And just thinking back about all these people who had failed, looking at all these people who had failed in this community group of realtors that, this prep agent group or whatever. And I was like, oh, I don't know. So even though I had passed the class test, I still was afraid because I had passed by the skin of my teeth. So I was like, oh my God, I was so afraid. So I ended up relocating to North Carolina, and I kind of put it behind me. And a friend of mine I hadn't spoken to in many years, in mid conversation, they go, we weren't even talking about careers or anything. They were like, have you ever thought about doing real estate? And I was like, it's so funny because I literally was just asking God,
Wow.
like, should I still pursue this thing? So I ended up, when you go for your real estate exam and you pass your class, you have a year to actually register to take the state exam.
Mhm.
My state exam registration was going to expire on September 22nd. I went and took the test on September 21st and passed the first time around. And I
Wow.
said to myself, I said, I cannot believe I almost allowed fear to
Here.
rob me. Fear to rob me of the life I could have been living for 20 years. This was a 20-year journey, and I allowed fear to really almost rob me of this opportunity. Now, I just recently locked in with eXp Realty, and I'm just super excited. And God has literally been supplying the need concerning when it's a God idea and it's a God vision and a God dream. He literally will supply every single need. It's expensive to become a realtor,
Mhm.
and I was like, with me not working right now, I was like, God, how am I going to pay for this? I had not one, but two people come to me saying that they were going to pay for my licensing fees and my realtor fees.
Wow.
And I said, oh my God. So I went with one person. I asked God, I was like, God, who am I supposed to go with? And I went with the one person, and the person, and one of the things that my bishop had been preaching about, he was saying, like, somebody's going to break the rules for you, not break the law, but break the rules for
Rules,
you.
yes.
And literally, this person broke their own rules to get me where I need to go. And I was like, okay, God, this is where I'm supposed to be, because it's literally like the doors are just flying open. Literally, the path is just
Yes.
being made. And this was literally one of those dreams that's taken flight, because it wasn't a dream that I had for myself. This is definitely a God dream. And He is supplying every single need, and dotting every I, and literally being the light to my path and in my footsteps in regards to this process. So it's been a journey. I literally just locked in with them like 2 days ago. So I'm super
Wow, wow. What
excited.
a powerful story explaining what you think her dreams take flight means. Meant for her was birthed from the idea that, I would go into rooms and I'm like, where are the women?
Wow.
What's going on? I remember the one that was really pivotal was a room full of business entrepreneurs where they were raising money. And it was my first pitch event. And they were raising up to $8 million. And there was only one woman on the stage.
Wow.
And at this point, I was maybe a year and a half into leaving corporate and being on my own. And I couldn't still really understand why. Like, where I kept asking the question, where are the women? What's going on? Especially in rooms where large amount of money is being raised for business. I mean, we're always talking about we need funding. I'm looking for money for this. I want to scale. And these women were not in the room. And I was barely, 2 years in my business. And I was already like, what do people do in entrepreneurship? I wanted to know. Like, I knew well enough what people did in corporate, but I wanted to know, like, what do people in business do and how do they get funded? And that led me to start asking those questions. And I quickly found the answer was a lot
Mm.
of women are still living in fear of living out their dreams.
Yes. Yep.
And, we founded Meant for Her. The idea came to me 2018. By 2019, we launched it. And in the midst of the pandemic was when we released our flagship program called Her Dreams Take Flight. And why? Because a lot of women are just not picking up that dream and running with it. So your story backs up the reason why we have to do this. All
Wow.
women need, the community, the support, the person
Yeah.
to say, you can do this. And let me show you how. Is it funding you're afraid of? There is a way. Is it strategy? There is a way. I don't know anything about marketing. Well, guess what? Let's work on that marketing strategy. So there's always a reason, and I feel like women, we overanalyze things. We're very emotional, and that not in a bad light, not in a bad way to say women are emotional. That's good. We're emotional and we were created to have that instinct. But a lot of times we allow that instinct that should actually propel us, we allow it to then dim us down. And for you, that was what happened. You were overanalyzing what could happen. I'm going to fail, but you haven't even failed. And you
Didn't
weren't
even try.
You didn't even fail. Your first try at, getting your real estate license, you passed the test. So, a lot of times we're stuck in our heads. And I love what you said, we're stuck in our heads and we just don't move forward. And if you're a woman out there listening to this and you've said for years, I'm not sure, I have these dreams and I just can't make it happen. Contact us. Our contact information is down below, and reach out to us. Let us know how we can help. We have phenomenal coaches who can talk to you, walk you through the process. Every woman has a story, and I believe stories are bridges. I believe it's a bridge to help another person across. Right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
trying to go from point A to B, and you're like, how do I get there? Well, guess what? Nakiea Wilkinson has gone through that bridge. She was a mom who, had NICU kids and she walked through it. So, whatever your fears are, we're here to help you with that. If you were talking to your younger self, would you say to Nakiea Wilkinson, the younger you?
I would say don't look at anybody but God. Keep your eye on the goal. Don't look at people. Don't listen to people. Because I think the biggest setback for myself was listening to people.
Wow.
And don't listen to anybody. Don't allow fear to rob you of the life that you desire to live.
Nakiea, so many voices are out there today, right? There's so many platforms and organizations, and the one I know most women go through. If you're thinking about starting a business, I know you've thought, or not just a business. I want to write a book. I want to launch something. The first thing that comes is, well, someone else has done it, right? Or they've done it better. There's that comparison that steals and robs us of
All the
our
time.
right of our true purpose and our joy. And it's like you got to silence those voices that
Yes.
honestly, it's not even about the other people, it's you.
Yep.
Recently, I was in a conference with other women, and something pivotal was said. Before you can shatter the external glass, right? We talk about the glass ceiling that women have to shatter. Before we can, shatter those glass ceilings, we got to shatter the internal glass ceilings.
Mhm.
Those internal glass ceilings are the voices, right? Our internal voices that we say to ourselves, those limiting beliefs. I can't
Yep.
do it. You said it earlier, years. Well, if they did it, and they couldn't pass the test, then how am I supposed to pass it? So, dear younger us,
Don't look at the giants, look at your promise, because
just
that's what I did.
go for it, and go for it
Yes,
afraid, because
that part.
I'm sure you were scared to start NICU stories.
I was scared to start NICU stories because I don't want my voice out there. I was like, who's gonna listen to a NICU story? But surprisingly, a lot of people did, and they said it helped them through the
Yes,
NICU process. Like I've had testimonies come back, I'm like, man, thank you for this because it helped me get through the NICU. And I'm like, oh, people really are listening, and people across the globe are listening.
do it.
And I'm like, listen, jump out there. And even when it came to the real estate, like I saw all the giants, but didn't see the promise. Like I
Right.
really allowed myself to let fear and what might have happened without even just taking a chance. I feel like that older lady on the train and coming to America. Go ahead, honey, take a chance.
Just
So
do
let that
it.
be the voice inside of you. Go ahead, honey, take a chance.
I love it. I love it. Go ahead, honey. Take a chance. I love
Go
it. And
ahead.
that's what we're all doing, right? That's what we're
Right.
all doing. Everyone that you look up to, for those women or young women that are listening, you're like, how do they do it? Because I get that question all the time. And it's how do you do it? You're a mom,
Taking a
you're
chance.
a businesswoman, you do all these things. How do you do it? It's taking a chance. Just do it. Do it afraid. I started meant for
Okay.
her totally like there's a part of me that's like I can do all things, right? And then when you step out, it's like, whoa, wait, there are
Like, what
competitors
am I doing?
out there. People are
We
watching.
out here now. You're
Who's
like, we out here now.
exactly. But here we are today. And we are continuously improving, continuously building. And we're what I love and are for our audience and those who listen to us. One of the things we look for when we're looking for people who we bring onto our shows or share their stories are people who are helping others, people who are reaching back and pulling, because that's so important. We're building a community, honestly, a global community. Just so for those who don't know, for her is literally we have audiences in 4 countries, and that's been what in just less than in about 2 years of being open, right? We started in 2019, 2020, and here we are 3 years in 4 countries. Our magazine is read across the globe.
I
We have
love it.
viewers, members all across the globe, and we're going to do more. So keep your eyes peeled on this station. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the Men for Her show. Do you have anything else you want to tell our audience before you go? We do have your contact information displayed. So for those who would like to reach out to Nakiea Wilkinson of NICU Stories, do see the information below. Reach out via IG, her telephone, or email. And I'm sure she will be of a great help and resource to you, especially if you're a NICU mom or dad. If you have a story to tell, definitely reach out to
Definitely.
or for
Mhm.
support as well. So thank you so much, Nakiea, for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an amazing experience.
Thank you. That is how we do. That's how we roll. We are here to inspire you. We are here to equip you. We are here to empower you and connect you to realize your dreams. There's no dream too big. Actually, the bigger, the better is what we say at Men for Her. So I'm going to leave you with this. If fear was not a factor, what one thing would you build? What one thing would you dream to do? We are waiting for you at Men for Her. Have a wonderful day. Take care. No, you don't.